Welcome to Visionaries, where we believe your powerful message is the best way to grow your business and live a meaningful life. We have on Katie Wight today. What's up, Katie?
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm so excited. I feel like we're two peas in a pod when it comes to like talking about messaging, content, and the impact of being able to grow your business with all that visibility and intention. But before you got into, you run an agency, you sell different products. Before you got into this online like brand world, tell us a little bit about your journey of what led you to this point and where you're going.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much for having me, Don. So I've been in content and social media marketing for 10 years now. It's hard to believe. And the depth of my background is really in consumer goods products. So I started my career in snowboards, moved into I've been in beauty, skincare, I call them like grocery store brand type of thing. So really physical goods across a spectrum of industries. And I have been for 10 years developing content strategies, planning content, producing content, publishing content, community managing, social advertising, kind of the whole gambit. And I've gone from being like a one-woman show in the early days, of course, like 10 years ago, social media was pretty new. And we've seen in this field too, how it has been a slow roll for bigger companies, like allocating resources to social media. So I've kind of gone from this like one-woman team into managing an agency of my own. And so that's how I got into it.
Did you start in brands and then you went into your own?
Yeah. So I was at Burton Snowboards for 8 years. I started as a customer service rep there. That was my first job out of college. Moved in, worked for Jake Carpenter, who is the founder and owner, while he was CEO for a couple of years, which was an epic experience. And then moved into the marketing department there. And I started in the marketing department there just as a writer, like a content writer. I was running the women's blog, and then our social media manager left, and they didn't 2 weeks notice type of situation, and I got kind of thrown in to it. So trial by fire and just self-learning from there. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Those brands are so amazing to me. Like snowboarding, brands. So cool. So that brought you to this point today. I want to get into some practical steps that people can take, because what I often find is a lot of people in the online space, whether they're just starting or you even mentioned, and I agree, established brands do oftentimes too much planning when it comes to content. And by doing too much planning, you put off actually the creation and the promotion of that content to get results with it. What are some solutions for those with those symptoms of over planning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it is true. One thing you said about those established brands, I think like the level that the amount you want to plan and the lead time you want to give yourself is very dependent on like how big your company is, right? Because the more we can high level plan, but leave some of the nuance, exactly like you're saying, to more real time publishing, where you have this concept, but the best social media is the social media that really takes into account like it's social, right? So what's happening in real time. And so having a shorter lead time of your planning and spending more time in that publishing mode is really an ideal state. And I think depending on what's happening, so depending on the rest of your marketing calendar, like if you're a big e-com brand that has a promotional calendar that's pretty robust through the year, there's certain content you can plan ahead of time because it's going to line up with those promotions. But then there is other content you almost want to have placeholders for. And you're going to publish in that space, and maybe what the concept is, but you're going to carve out time closer to that publish date to produce it so that it strikes that chord of like time relevance and what's happening for your community. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. Keep going.
Well, I was just thinking your question about like, how do we keep the momentum and keep going? I think one of the biggest, not over planning is key. One of the biggest production hacks, it's kind of common sense a little bit when you hear it, but people forget it, is remembering that content planning, strategizing and planning is a different mindset and like whatever brain zone than producing. And so really carving out like specific times where you're going to produce and publish, like in that sitting, if you know you're going to, if you don't want to over plan, but separating it from your planning session. So maybe your planning session involves like, I know I'm going to have a post on these following dates, but I'm going to put a calendar block and like write and be in the mindset of writing or producing whatever type of media you're working with at that time, and separating it from your planning time is going to result in just more efficient production of your creative, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I feel like a big thing too that people get caught up on, a lot of brands, is sometimes crafting the right messaging for knowing actually what to say in the content, whether it's written word, podcast, or video, that actually resonates with their customers. What do you find works well with the process you guys take your clients through?
Yeah, that's my favorite question. So what I have just figured out over the years of trying to just sort of distill, like, what is the fastest way we can get to market a content plan, right, on behalf of a brand, is that there are that we in social media, in the field of social media, it is so easy to get overwhelmed because it's chaos. Like you're supposed to be posting. It's like, how often should we be posting? Do we need to post on all these channels? And the first thing we need to do is just way simplify it, because there's only really 3 types of content that any brand should publish ever. And the first, there's 3, and they sort of mirror the marketing funnel. I also like to talk about how they mirror social skills. Like, it mirrors how you make a new friend. And the whole goal of social media is to grow our audience, convert new prospects, and then retain loyalists, right? So the first type of content is going to be that growth content. It's kind of meeting your customer it's like on a mutual ground between you and your customer. So your customer is going to find this content useful, entertaining, valuable, even without buying your content. Then the second type of content that you want is the convert content. It's lined up with your products. It's talking about your products in customer benefit driven terms. And then the third type of content is your, like, it's the most about you. Now you have them. You have 2 pillars that are really all about them. And your third type is where you can talk about your mission, your process, whatever, your secret sauce, and like whatever it's going to be, that kind of, it's like that moment in where you've met someone, they're an acquaintance, and then the conversation's going so well, they tell you a story about themselves, and you're like, I love this guy. Like, it's that content. And so once you start to organize yourself and realize there are really only those 3 types, you can start to get more organized and more streamlined about what those stories are for you that live under each one of those types. And then that opens up a whole world of being able to kind of bridge the gap between your organic content and your performance marketing. We were talking about how a lot of people have pillar 2 kind of like is their sales funnel, and they've got their sales funnel over here, but then they've got organic over here, and we're spending all of this time producing weekly, if not daily, organic content that then barely gets any reach. So if you organize your content strategy in a way that mirrors the marketing funnel, you're also then able to layer on performance tactics to some of your organic marketing. So you're able to, target new eyeballs on a type 1 content piece, even if it's just, even I call it a new boost. Like, we don't usually boost, but it's like a little micro campaign. So we will, even if it's $10 behind a post, if your targeting is right, you'll see that goes so much further, and it starts pulling people into your funnel. I don't know if that was too much or if that makes sense.
That was, I mean, you're speaking my language, because I'm a marketer too at heart, Yeah. And I want to expand on that, because what you said is so valuable. And it totally mirrors similar frameworks to what we'd use at ContentSupply. And I want to kind of extend on that relationship analogy you started referencing with friendship. And I get to the level of like a partner or a spouse or a boyfriend and girlfriend, right? Where it's that relationship with your customer. many times I call those three phases, those three pillars, know, love, and trust content. So you're getting to know your customers, right? For you, it's that grow phase, right? And then they start to fall in love with you and become a lead. And that's during that second pillar of content, which is, what was the word you use again?
Convert.
Convert. Yeah, convert. Yeah.
So same thing. If we're talking about service providers, that's where they give you their number, so to speak.
Yeah, their number. You got the digits, and then eventually you can propose. They show that they trust you when they pay you, and so it's that trust phase, that know, love, trust. People hear of the know, like, trust factor. Love to me is a lot more indicative of a relationship, which is what you're in with your customers. And so I love that.
Well,
it does follow that marketing funnel. It's that sales funnel.
Totally. Yeah. And that love phase is like the loyalty phase, right? We talk a lot about, I think this is really relevant for most businesses, whether they're selling products or services. We're not in it for a one-time customer. Like, we want customers who have such a great experience and love us so much that they refer us to their friends. And we often overlook the fact that organic social and just social media marketing in general can play a huge role in that digital word of mouth. Like, they might not have an experience with you and then go sit down at their computer and send off an email, or on their iPhone and send off an email to all their friends talking about you. But if they are following you on your social channels and you put out a great piece of content that they love, they are much more likely to send that off DM style to their friends. So I think that, like, that love factor is really, we want to be digging in there as much as possible, building that relationship and building that community, because it's just a ripple effect. It's a long-term game for sure that can really pay off when you look at it that way.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's interesting too, because you sometimes, for the retention, right? Retain is your third phase, right, of content. With that, as they trust you, people can fall out of trust. The times that I've made mistakes, like my agency, we've definitely no agency is perfect. Mistakes happen. You can tend to lose trust with clients, or if it's products you're selling, and you have to retain that trust and that love and that knowledge. Like with any great relationship, otherwise a divorce will happen, right? They'll split ways with you and go to someone else who may be offering something better. So I think the funnel to me is kind of like a loop, right? You go through it successfully, you get that 100%. Sale, but then continue to help them get to know you, grow to fall in love with you, and then, scale with that ability to keep showing ways to trust. And then that's where other products or upsells and other offers and products you can offer them along the journey that they're on with you is also important.
Yeah. And I think that third, that trust phase, that's really, especially for service providers too, that's the best place to be putting your, your behind the scenes, like all of that stuff, because early on in the relationship, you're really making the know and the like. I assume this is similar for you. You're making that known, like they are the center of that world. Like, they think they're getting to know you, but really they're just getting to know how well you know them and what they need. And so it's finally time after I always use this analogy of like a cocktail party back when there used to be in-person networking, right? Like, there's
back in the day, like 60 years ago, like I'm thinking of like Mad Men, right? They had like cocktail parties.
Exactly. It could be like that. Yeah. But you're like, I know this, I know that person. I know that, like, I need to make a connection with that person. I'm going to get an intro. You get that intro and you don't just start, like, if you're savvy, you don't just start talking about yourself. You've done your research. You find out, like, if they like golf, you start talking about golf and they're like, oh, I'll listen to this person. And you slowly bring the conversation from them to you, and you wait for their sort of like indicator that you have said enough of the right things that prove you have enough in common that then they want to hear about you. And so it's the same way in all of marketing and social media marketing as well. You really want to make sure. A lot of brands mess that up. They have that trust content, that retain content, that pillar 3, all about the brand content, is like the majority of their content, which is all wrong. It should be only about 20%, right? Because you're mirroring that. Like we need to have the pedal on the top of funnel. It needs to be pressed down harder than the bottom. And so, and it should be less about you and more about them. So a lot of brands kind of put themselves and their brand story at the hero of their social media channels and wonder why, you know, their engagement is low, and it's because it's too much about them.
You know, it's so much easier said than done though. It's so easy to use and to reference ourselves, our stories. I think of Instagram stories when you go to like do behind the scenes, it feels like, well, this is about me. Right. So in that no phase or that grow phase for content creation, how can someone turn their mindset to think about their customers as the hero of the story they're telling in the content?
Yeah, that's a great story. And that gets to really, I think, the like historical, like when social media first hit the scene, most brands weren't looking at it at all as a sales tool. It was just a top of funnel marketing tool. So all social media content was that top of funnel pillar 1 content. And so I think that you apply this kind of old school social media marketing mentality to it, which is we talk in our agency about, like, we kind of think about big ideas on a quarterly basis, and then we take those down and bring them down into like maybe monthly blog posts or something. But the idea of them and that top of funnel content is that common ground between you and them. And there's the evergreen type, and then there's the time sensitive type. And I think that this is like a really relevant time to talk about that. You know, we saw a huge shakeup in the field of social media marketing last year that we're still in the middle of, the limited mindset sounded like brands that would say COVID's not our lane, or like this COVID related topic, not our lane, right? Or whatever's happening is not our lane. People still want to hear about this. And it's like, well, actually the world is going through this, like we're going through this collective experience that is your lane on social media, or figuring out how it relates to you. So as a service provider, like example of this might be like work from home content, or like commiserating about being a small business owner in the current times that we're in, right? It just gets their attention that you have that thing in common, that you're living that shared experience. I think that sometimes we too think about it in terms of that's more the time relevant piece, but the evergreen piece for service providers, we get really caught up in like, it's that how-to content. It's how to do the stuff that, you know, your prospects and customers, clients want to do. And we get a little hung up on, we don't want to give too much away because like, this is what we do, right? If we tell everyone how we do what we do, then why will they need to hire us? But the opposite is true. The more you show someone, the more you flex, the more your ideal customers want you to do that for them. So I think making sure our mindset is super abundant for that top of funnel content is really, really helpful. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The abundance is definitely a keyword that jumped out to me. And also you started to reference it towards the end, which I mean, all that was very good and valuable. The thought that jumps out to me is this idea of information, and that we feel like we have so many secrets that are our thing, our signature frameworks, the list goes on, and that we only want to reserve those, say, for courses or workshops that people have to pay to get access to. But in all reality, like, this is something I have to remind myself constantly of, is there's only so much information that is so new, right? Like marketing, storytelling, like all these things have been around for years. It's just the tools that have evolved, right? Our ability to create video faster, or to now be a radio show host with a podcast, you know, is becoming easier. And so at the end of the day, there aren't too many secrets as there are just our unique perspective on certain proven processes that work. Marketing can be pretty simple. if you break it down to the essentials. And for it to work well, you got to follow a process, and people throughout, we have different words for different phases, but we still broke it down into 3 phases, right? And we may use different tools or, softwares to implement it. But I think there's power to be said in the fact that your uniqueness is going to come down to your perspective and how you achieve results for your customers, be that through products or services, versus the information itself. Because people, like, information can be accessed anywhere online. The internet's crazy loaded with information. And so I think we need to give away all of our secrets and be willing to do that. And then people will pay for, the help for how to get that done, the implementation of that information.
Yeah, I think in hearing you say that, what comes to mind for me is like the idea of just marketing in general as a service provider really shares that with social media marketing, just like as a general field. That being like, what makes it work is the nuance of humanness. Like, what makes it strike a chord is just exactly what you're saying. Like, it's the unique perspective, it's the unique presentation, it's whether or not someone enjoys the way that you talk and present something. And if they like the way you do that with one thing, they're going to stick around and learn. If there's a topic they could learn in 100 different places, they're going to want to learn it from you. And I think really trusting that is definitely key. And it's the same reason, quite frankly, this could be an unpopular opinion, but I advocate for a lot of small business owners to empower themselves to lead their own social media marketing. And like, maybe that's not doing all of it. To lead it, actually be engaged, instead of like, before you just outsource to an agency, you are the one that has the most knowledge about your customer, your product, your service, your industry, what has worked, what strikes chords. And like, all of that is so valuable to be embedded in, the most human part of your marketing, which is social a lot of the times. I mean, and so I think just remembering that I have to do the same thing all the time, remind myself that like, just the abundancy mindset is the way to go. And when you do, you can kind of really just like block out the noise and get into your own zone and lean into like why people like you in the first place, and just cultivate more and more of that.
Yeah, that's so powerful, because a lot of people listening to or watching this podcast are the visionary types who have big vision for the brand they want to build. They're maybe at different levels, that they're just starting out, or they're deep into growing a brand after many years. But they're looking to break out to get more visibility. And ultimately, at the end of the day too, like, I say this often, like, I truly believe in order to achieve what you want in business, and definitely in life, is by having a clear vision, knowing exactly what that looks like to achieve that vision. But then your vision's only as good as your ability to communicate it. And the way you communicate it is obviously through content, like what we've been discussing and using these strategies. And so kind of like your customers are never going to know how much you care about them, how much you want to serve them, if you don't actually talk to them.
Right.
And so, you need that visibility there. Same way, like, I never would have gotten married if I never would have asked out my wife, or, there's all these different comparisons, but I think there's a lot of power to be had in all of these practical strategies you've been walking. And you have plenty of frameworks and resources, people can go learn more about what that is through your different channels. But what are some like parting words and directions for people who are like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling a little more confident that I can put some structure here, categorize my content into these 3 types. What's their next right step to feel confident that they can become more visible?
I love that question. I think I have two really basic thoughts. The first is this idea of start wherever you're most comfortable. So you and I were talking earlier about how, I was reading, I think it was a Hootsuite report, like a 2021 report, and it was talking about how one of the social media marketing industry's pitfalls is that we're constantly chasing newness, and like shiny object syndrome is literally embedded into like our field. So yeah, so you know, in Strong Brand Social, we talk about this a lot. We went to market last year with our courses really focused on Instagram and Facebook, and we know we want to add more channels. But we also know from really being accountable in our agency relationships for measurable growth and attribution that like these table stake platforms are really a great place to start. And if you're feeling like, oh, I'm late to the party, wait, I can't, you know, if you have paralysis because you're not doing a lot of video content yet, for example, or you're not on TikTok yet, and like, you don't know how you're going to get those resources, know that tons of incredible brands like are built with the most standard approach. And if you're most comfortable with some copy and some stock images, like start with that and just get it out there. Because I guess to loop back and close that loop, the article that Hootsuite was reading, it was like TikTok was all the craze in 2020. It's all that marketers were talking about. Yet when measured, it was the least effective in terms of actual measurable business impact. And so like, it can be easy to get overwhelmed with feeling like, well, I'm so far behind. I don't even know where to start, when really like your tried and true fundamentals are enough to grow your brand. And then the other piece is thinking about, you know, one of the questions you asked me earlier, just about that pillar one content and getting it out there. I think it's, people listening to this are probably familiar with the concept of a lead magnet, right? And so that's kind of what the direct response market has done to what I think of as just pure like pillar one social content, and that content that really bridges the gap between you and your prospect and provides value without them having to buy something. And I think consider doing something similar to a lead magnet, but in just a blog format, where you're just without all of the like cumbersome tech to it, not necessarily needing to like capture the email on the first blast or have that thank you page after and funnel it into the list, like at the very minimum viable. Just place it, like typing up a few sentences for ad copy that are driving click through to a blog, and being able to see more quickly like what that click through rate looks like and get more messages out to market. That pillar one content really is what people come into your brand for. And so kind of dialing back the mindset of what's needed for a lead. Like if we get people to our website and our pixel is firing, that's a lead that we can retarget. And so just making the barrier to entry a little bit lower, to bring people into your world, I think is probably a valuable thing to think about.
Yeah. And simplify. Like, I feel like, you know, you talk about the shiny object syndrome, and like, that's so valuable. And what kind of the theme I pulled from that, the nugget, is to simplify, right? We can have all these directions we can go, all these strategies and things we can do. But particularly if we are a team of one or just a team of few before a team of many, then we should simplify as much as possible. I'm saying this mostly for myself, right? Like I'm trying to catch myself right now, because it is like, we have to constantly be like looking at what we're doing and like, okay, where are we paralyzed in our, need to take action? What areas do we need to truly focus on? And I think, you said it so well with this idea of putting out messages and just getting that visibility in some form, even if it starts so simple, like the solutions you shared. Yeah. Oh, this is so good, Katie.
We always,
man.
Thank you so much, Dallin.
This has been so good. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining on.
Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much for listening. Once again, if you would like to learn more about how you can use your unique message and share with the world through video and create videos that actually are professional and perform, bring you money, and all of the results and influence that you want to make, then I invite you to learn more by going to ContentSupply.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you very soon.